continuing our conversation with State Senator Ralph Shorty about changing some of the language in the state questions that you approved a couple months ago having to do with criminal justice reform. Just got this question in from Phyllis. She said, Mr. Shorty, if you did not read the bill before you voted on it, how do we have confidence that you are reading the legislation that you're currently working on?
Well, I, like every other voter, read the ballot title, and I agreed with the intent of the ballot title. But there were a lot of changes in the actual statutes, and that's, this is not like a constitutional amendment. This was a statutory change done through a constitutional process. So no, I didn't go through and read the 27 sections of law that were changed, and there were a lot of changes. In fact, we even dealt with pawnbrokers in State Question 780 and different property crimes.
So when were these changes made?
Oh, they were made through the state question. The 200-word summary only summarizes what most of the intent of the state question is.
Right.
And so that's what I was going off of when I voted for it. Just like most of the voters out there, I would say. But I didn't know that we had these proximity crimes, and I'll be honest, I didn't know that we were changing the pawnbrokers portions of the law as well in State Question 780. And so, the intent, I think, is very clear, and I agree entirely with the intent. The implementation of this, though, especially with 781, is not good at all. In fact, when I read the ballot title for 781 and saw that OMES was mentioned in it, then I was out on that one already.
I want to get to this one also from our Facebook from Debbie. Why didn't he voice these concerns before the election instead of trying to change what voters approved?
Well, most of the concerns, particularly with like the proximity crimes, came to me after the election. We had, had some district attorneys and some teachers, law enforcement that said, we've opened up this, misdemeanor possession on school grounds. And so I went and looked into the law and saw that.
Isn't it within 1,000 feet, or isn't it not on school grounds? Like someone can't be shooting up meth on the side of a playground. Isn't it within a certain?
No, it completely removed it from the statute. And that's what I'm saying is that section of law that talked about the proximity crime. So it was within 1,000 feet, but that included the school grounds or the parks or wherever, recreational areas of higher education. There's a whole list in that section. That was completely removed by State Question 780. And so I think we ought to think about putting those restrictions back in. I don't think it needs to be 1,000 feet, but at least it should not be on the grounds of a school or playground or a park where kids are going to visit. People shouldn't be doing drugs there, and I think we need to make it clear that if you do drugs on a school ground, then you're going to have enhanced penalties. It's going to be more than just a misdemeanor.
It's going to be a felony.
So go somewhere else. Go somewhere else and go to your home or whatever.
This question from Robert, he says it seems like it's just another example of a legislator refusing to listen to the will of the people. What would you say to Robert?
Well, and I don't blame Robert for having that opinion, because the bill has been completely mischaracterized in the print media. The first article said that it's on the chopping block, and I was very clear with the reporter when I said I don't intend or nor do I want to repeal State Question 780, but there are concerns, specific minutia concerns that need to be looked at, especially with the implementation. There's no guarantee in 780 that anybody is going to receive rehabilitation services. The guarantee is that they could have up to a year in the county jails. And so we need to write that into the law. We need to write a mechanism that allows these people that need help to be able to get the help, because it's not currently written into the law.
Okay, again, want to be clear, you are not saying we're repealing, we're getting rid of State Question 780 after voters already passed it. You're saying we need to change some of the language, and that's all we've ever said here is you're just wanting to change, tweak some of the language, and maybe include a little bit more into it. TJ says, make no mistake about it, this is a dangerous precedent for democracy when the voice of the people can be changed. And people agree, we already voted on this. We voted on the language legally to go back in and manipulate it and change it. People are very hesitant about the precedents that it sets.
Well, and I'll tell you, the proponents of the state questions have already proposed changes to the language, and that's what confuses me about this conversation is stuff that wasn't fixed. Chris Steele said to one of the representatives who talked to me last night, said we need to make tweaks. We didn't fully consider the Department of Mental Health having the accounts and things like that. So those are the types of things that need to be because implementation of this under the current structure, how it's written currently, is not going to be implemented very well, especially when you have the director of OMES that controls everything. He controls how the money is determined.
You keep referencing that. You might want to tell everybody OMES.
OMES is the Oklahoma Management Enterprise Services Agency. It's basically the financial agency for every state agency. Most of the consolidation has gone under OMES for all these state agencies. And quite honestly, my opinion of them is not very high. I think everything they touch just turns to garbage for the most part. The consolidation efforts have been implemented terribly. And they shouldn't be handling this. They should let the professionals handle it, and that's the Department of Mental Health. So we just had a bill this last week that moved the money that's going to be generated by 781 over to mental health. So that's a change of the state question that needed to happen, that was supported by the proponents of State Question 781. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. There are changes that need to happen in order to implement this properly.
Let me ask you, in an ideal world, we've already used this. We've already said we want criminal justice reform. Our prisons are overcrowded. We're spending way too much money on this. It'd be cheaper and morally maybe more effective to treat these people and not just lock them up and slap them with a felony, a scarlet letter for the rest of their lives. What would you do? What would you rewrite this in a perfect world? What would you like to see happen? 780, 781.
Well, I think the two issues with 780 are proximity crimes. I think those need to be fully vetted.
So take it back to 1,000 feet from.
I don't
from
think
a
it needs.
school.
I don't think it needs to be 1,000 feet, but definitely
Okay.
on school grounds and some other areas there.
So that's
and then
something
and
you'll
then
be pushing
use
for?
use in front of a minor child. If you're shooting
Okay.
up heroin in front of a 9-year-old,
It should be a felony.
there should be some enhanced penalties. I don't know if it needs to
Okay.
be a first-time felony, but it absolutely should be some enhanced penalties. There should be a point where you say, don't do that.
Okay.
For the most part, though, the rest of the possession charges, I'm fine with, and I think I voted for it, and agreeing that we change some of those possessions. But implementation is absolutely important. If people really need help and they really need the rehabilitation service, which I support entirely, then the money needs to go there. Right now, there's no guarantee in 781 the money is going to go there. There's no process for a county to go even apply for that money. There's no grant process written into the law, and we're going to rely on a director of OMES, according to 781, to even promulgate the rules with no oversight by anybody else. So I think we're making some movements on that end as far as the implementation goes, and I think we need to be very careful about proximity crimes and then also usage of these types of drugs around children.
Okay. And so then the OMES, you say everything they touch really turns to garbage, and so you don't want them to handle this. You want the mental health to.
I think I'm very hesitant towards any state agency. I believe the bureaucracy is always going to try to help itself. So I don't trust any state agency director as far as I can throw them. But mental health is the experts. They're the ones that do the licensing of these service providers. They're the ones that do, they approve these rehabilitation programs. They're the experts in the fields. They really should be the ones that are implementing the state questions. Is not OMES. OMES should not be handling it at
We
all.
should let the experts be the experts. All right. Ralph Shorty, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
We
Thank you.
appreciate you
Thank you.
clearing up a lot of confusion from the viewers.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
we appreciate the time. Keep us posted, as obviously this is something you're very passionate about and something you'll be pushing for in this legislative session. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Abigail.